In today's episode, we look at 4 different ways to make conscious choices in the midst of uncertainty and to see whether or not this is an opportunity for redefining both you and your business. Building a business and life that blends contribution, fulfillment, and financial reward? Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the show for women in their 40s and beyond who are on this adventure. I'm Angela Rasmus, and I'm delighted you're here. Hey there, and welcome to episode 115 of the Your Next Chapter podcast. This, of course, is Angela. I haven't podcasted for a couple of weeks. You may have noticed that if you're one of my regular listeners. And I guess it's not that surprising. I think there's quite a few of us who feel more than a little discombobulated by this new normal that we're now experiencing. And I guess I also felt that I didn't want to add to the noise. I wanted to contribute to the conversation instead. And that meant I had to allow myself to sit back and just feel into this. There's been significant changes in my world, and I'm sure there really has been in yours as well. Both my husband and I are both business owners. You know, I've been working for myself since 2003. So it's been a very long time since I've relied on somebody else to provide me with revenue, in terms of, you know, getting a weekly wage, etc. And the same with my husband. And so with all the stuff that's going down with COVID-19 at the moment, we've certainly seen an impact on the revenues from my husband's business in particular, which is a marine-based business where people buy boats, or rather don't at the moment. And in fact, the factory where the boats, the Beneteau brand, which is what we work with, are created, has been closed because France is, like many places in the world, in a great big lockdown. So I guess I allowed myself for these last 10 days or so just to feel the feels. And I've spoken about this before, and I actually brought this into my Facebook group and into my masterminds lately. And it was in the last newsletter that I sent out a couple of weeks ago when this pandemic was beginning, but it hadn't really shown its full colours here in Australia. But I talked about the need for us to allow our emotions to be felt. In the recovery movement, we call it feel, deal, heal. And that's the whole idea of whatever comes up, we need to experience it to move through to the other side. There's nothing to be gained by pushing it down or avoiding our emotions or anything like that, because they will come back and be heard. And so it's like whack-a-mole sometimes, you know, that game that you see at some amusement arcades where you whack that emotion down over there and it pops back up over here. So you have to whack it down over there and it pops back up somewhere else. And I certainly don't want to be like that any longer. So I've learned the hard way at the coalface to let the emotions go through. So I've been all sorts, you know, the whole full gamut of fear and despair and anger and disbelief and all of the, inverted commas, negative emotions. To be honest, I've done a lot of work over the years with my own mindset coach who taught me that there isn't so much negative emotions, there's just emotions and the different ways that we feel them. So however the feelings are that you've been experiencing, I hope that you can move into this space as well, to just allow yourself to feel them, because none of them are wrong. And as one of my, you know, my way showers, Brene Brown, would say, if you've come across her work before, she talks about the FFTs, the effing first time. And this is certainly an effing first time for most of us. I'm not sure many who are listening to my show have been through any sort of a pandemic before. And so there isn't a rule book. There's nothing that we can turn to that says, here's the way to handle this. We need to lean inwards, Google inside, I guess, before outside, to work out what this new normal means to us. And in particular, if you are a solo, micro, small business owner listening to this, then what does it mean for your business going forward? Because there's certainly some changes. Now, some of those are short term, and some of those will be longer term. I don't believe, personally, we'll come to the other side of this experience without some significant changes happening. And I believe in particular, we are going to be connecting even more deeply to meaning and purpose. There's been some stark contrasts in our lives here in Australia and showing us what's really important. In times like this, you tend to strip back all the external adornments and work out what really matters. And certainly what's come through more than anything for many of us is the concept of connection and how deeply important connection to other people is, how deeply important being of service to others is, how deeply important adding value to the world is. And I believe that, again, if you're in my world, then you're already connected to those sort of emotions, but I think it's going to come down another whole layer as we get even closer to balancing that heart with head. I often talk about that your next chapters are about contribution and fulfillment and financial reward, and that is more true than ever. One of the experiences I've had in the last week was beautiful friend of mine, Donna, who has been in lockdown in Milan for quite some time. She came into my Facebook group as one of the guests to do Facebook Lives in the last week. And her concept, I loved this concept. It really resonated with me. The idea that at this point in time, to be a refuge for your clients is really important. A refuge in terms of a safe space to be, away from the turmoil, and that makes perfect sense to me. We talked about the concept that a lot of brands have, or maybe not a lot, maybe that's a little bit too much to say, but many brands have tended to rely on fear in which to sell and position themselves. They've relied on the concept of FOMO, fear of missing out, to close sales, and how wrong that ever was. It's not a philosophy that I've ever embraced, but now even more so. And so brands that have utilized those sort of strategies and tactics in the past, it isn't going to ring true. It never really did, but now more than ever, it's going to be obvious that that is not the way in which we want to connect and make decisions, purchase decisions, connection decisions going forward. It's people who have always been transparent and really focused on absolutely helping people create an outcome, move to the next level of them, and doing that honestly, genuinely, with that real sense of service, are going to be more important than ever. And I know that's you. Without a doubt, that is you. So all this is about at the moment is connecting more deeply to that. But obviously there's other pieces to this as well. So I wanted to share some thoughts that have been happening in my world, in the world of myself and my clients. One of the things that I've done is, you've probably heard me talk about that I run masterminds. Well, those mastermind groups, they don't necessarily have a call every single week, but they do now. I've added connection calls into the work that I do because that, as I said at the beginning, that concept of connection is more important than ever right now. So we had a call this morning, lots of people on that call, and what I asked was, what's good for you at the moment and what's happening? So that opportunity to express how you're feeling, but also really importantly to try and find the gold within the current situation. And, and those overall feelings that are going on. And here's some of the things that came up. And some of these, hopefully you'll resonate with as well. One of the women talked about a feeling of, who am I now? Because a lot of her work has been done face-to-face in the past, and now there's this need to pivot into a whole new way of delivery. And with that big change, who does that mean she is now in terms of, the definition of herself as a business owner and the type of service she provides? How does she redefine herself now? And that's what I was meaning by the Google inside. And the reality, someone else talked about how they're grieving. They're grieving for the business that they had, the life that was there only a couple of weeks ago, and how much it's changed now. And perhaps that's an emotion or a state that you can relate to as well. It's a really interesting concept, and grieving makes sense. It's sadness for something that has been lost, which you did not have control over. So if you've been trying to find a label for what you're feeling, and it's really good to name what's going on, that makes it a lot easier to deal with, perhaps grief is what you're feeling at the moment when it comes to the change in a business and life sense. Okay. Another person suggested that they're only listening to trusted experts. They've made a couple of decisions as to people they want to listen to be the voice of reason in this uncertain time, and they are tuning out other sources of information because they inflame their emotions. Another person spoke about how they've chosen to listen to some futurists, people who were talking about or speculating about what this change could mean for the future. With everything that's going on, how might the world look different? And she loves the opportunity to think forward in that way. Another person talked about how this has really made her recognise the importance of play. Her son and her are in lockdown at the moment in quarantine because he'd just come back from overseas. And the two of them and the two dogs are in this really small space together, and they have limitations on what's possible at the moment. So they've been looking at what does fun mean, what does play look like, and what they've been introducing there. Another one that came up was the importance of connecting every day. So getting out of your normal space and connecting. And this is where Zoom has come into its own. Now, we've been using Zoom for quite a while for mastermind calls and for my own personal mentoring calls with clients and running webinars. I love face-to-face style webinars. But at the moment, we heard that Zoom's share price is just gone through the roof, as you can imagine. And if you're not familiar with Zoom, Zoom is online video conferencing. The website is zoom.us, as in us. And it's a fantastic platform. And connecting with people. If you can't be there face to face, then video is the next best thing. And another one that came up was, I've been making a list of all the things that I want to do that I haven't had time for. And I tried this one last night myself and listed down all sorts of things, from gardening to finishing my book and many, many other things in between. And perhaps you might like to try that one as well. One of the conversations that we've had inside my Facebook group is most of us have unfinished courses on our hard drive. And maybe this is the perfect time for you to have a look at a particular skill gap that you want to close. Before you go and invest in anything, check. There may be a course on your hard drive that you've forgotten about. So there was and there was more ideas as well, but lots of those sort of things talking about what's coming up for them and the questioning that is going on at the moment. And so that led into other points of discussion, and I want to share some of those with you as well, because I think they're going to be helpful. Now, I just made a mention of the concept of investing. So at the time when our incomes are quite often contracting, the idea of investing in any way might feel really alien to you, a little bit counterintuitive, a bit foolish. But I want to pose a thought here that it is really important for our economy to stay as a river and not a pond. Okay, so a river that suggests movement, as in still investing in different types of ways. Because if it turns into a pond that has no movement becomes stagnant. It becomes a swamp. We do not want that for our businesses or for other people's businesses as well. So although we may not actually think of it as a river, think of it as a stream. What small investments can we still make to keep things moving? One such example is I enrolled last night in a writer's accountability hub. For the next, I think it's 30 days, this lovely woman, Catherine Coluccio, who's over in New Zealand, and she is running this accountability group for the next month for people who have always been wanting to write regularly and probably have every intention, as I did at the beginning of this social distancing and staying home, but I just haven't got around to it. And maybe that's because of that feeling of discombobulation I spoke about earlier. So the investment to be in Kat's world at the moment, it's not a huge one, but it's still an investment. Is it a necessity? No, it's not. But it is something that not only will help me, will also help her and the other people that are in the group as well. So think about that. What are small ways in which you can continue to invest at the moment to continue to contribute to the moving of the stream, if not the river? Another wee idea there is my husband and I have decided that each week we will order a meal, takeaway, obviously, from a local small business whilst they're all still operating. They're taking a tremendous hit with not being able to have people, obviously, in their restaurants. And so if we can do just one meal a week, that is still within our budget, and it's going to help another business as well. Or another example, today we just took our dog for a walk, because we can do that, just the two of us out walking. And there is a takeaway coffee place. And we bought a coffee and an ice block. And I basically tipped them up to the next level. And it was only a small amount. But if every person made that tiny tip, then those small businesses which are really hurting could also find themselves in a much better situation. So I want you to think about how could you contribute to that stream at the moment. There's many different ways that might be possible for you. Okay. Another piece that came up was the incredible importance of having structure in our days. Really important to not allow that to go completely out the window when we've lost all of our normal frameworks, or a lot of our normal frameworks. Now, a little asterisk there. I've been working at home for years, so this part isn't so much of a change for me. But my husband, for example, he's been working, out of home in offices for his business. But that's not possible right now. So we went and ferreted around in the storage facility we have, which held a lot of furniture from when I had a physical office in Sydney. And we pulled him out a desk and we've set that up at home, and it's taken over half the lounge room, but that's okay at the moment. But he isn't as used to working in the same way as I am at home. And that structure in your day really helps you to bed down, to anchor into this new reality. So what does structure look like? Well, it's different for everybody, but the easiest way I like to think of it is the bookends of your day. And again, if you've been in my world for a while, you may be familiar with that. The bookends is simply how you start your day and how you end your day. So when I'm traveling well, when I have these frameworks in place, for me that looks like the Tibetan rites in the morning, the Genius Mind Writing, which is like journaling, a piece of meditation, a piece of exercise, a healthy meal, etc., etc. And at the end of the day, it means going to bed at pretty much the same time every night, doing my gratitude lists and listening to either a meditation or some sort of beautiful music to ease me into sleep. Okay, well, that went out the window for the last week to 10 days. I've not been eating well. I certainly wasn't exercising. I certainly wasn't journaling. My husband and I were binge watching the Good Fight and just getting to bed far too late. And then I was done grabbing my iPad and reading about, terrible COVID-19 news. Now, hello, is that why I wasn't sleeping so well? And the beat goes on. So I changed that last night. We only watched 2 episodes, not 4. Got into bed at the right time, got up this morning and started my normal structure and routine again. And look at this. I'm actually recording a podcast, something I have not done for 2 weeks. Again, having that structure in my day has made a huge difference. So I encourage you to just put that gentle structure into your day as well if you have lost it for a while. Again, no judgment here. When you're going through an FFT, as Brene would say, it's not that unusual to take a wee while for us to find our feet, this new level of normal. But it is so important. There's one more piece to this structure. I call it the park benches of your day. And that's just those small times when you pause, take a breath, re-anchor yourself, just check in with yourself. And that's when I find box breathing is really helpful. That's the whole breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and rest for 4. The power of the breath is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And this, I guess, to an extent for many of us, this slower pace, the less demands that may be on us in terms of activities at the moment, that allows you to become even more intentional about the things that you do. Intentional conversations, intentional Facebook Lives, intentional podcasts, or whatever the case may be, but really connecting in to how you want the people who will be exposed to your work in that respect. How do you want them to receive it? How do you want them to feel? Get really connected to that. It's just a beautiful opportunity for us to do that at the moment. So lastly, the last thoughts that came up in the call, which I was sharing with the girls today, was the concept of being conscious. Okay, and I found there's really 4 pieces here, which I began to touch on other pieces that I've spoken about here, but I want to put these 4 in a wee list for you. So the first one is conscious visibility. Okay. Now, I know, as I mentioned before, I dropped off the radar, the external radar, for a wee while whilst I was finding my feet again. I've been quite active in my Facebook groups, but not in my newsletter, not on my podcast, not on my Facebook page, not on LinkedIn, not on Instagram, sort of disappeared. Now, it's important for conscious visibility at the moment because this will change. We will come to the other side of this. And I believe it's really important for you to have remained as a lighthouse and an anchor for your audience. Now, personally, as I said at the start, to me, it's not business as usual at the moment. We don't just bundle and full speed ahead with all the same messaging and activities as we had before this pandemic, because that doesn't feel right, but neither does hiding. So pausing and seeing, what does it mean for you? What does conscious visibility look like for you? And then do that. The next one is conscious observation. Now, this is the power of example. So be conscious of what are other people doing in your space or in the business world at the moment. What triggers you in a good way in terms of it makes you pause and go, there's an idea. How might that work for me? This is about looking for inspiration. And I've seen a lot of it lately in terms of the way people are connecting and drawing together. So what is it that's happening in the marketplace that inspires you that you might emulate in some way? In your flavor, obviously. I'm not talking about copying here, because your experience and your perspective and your audience and your services, they're all unique to you. I'm talking about inspiration. So some conscious observation may help you come up with some activities there. Another one is conscious connection. We talked about on the call this morning, yes, and on this podcast, about reaching out and connecting with individuals, making sure people are okay, bringing them into your world, as I have with the extra calls through my mastermind. But it's not just that. It's thinking a little more broadly. How might you collaborate and co-create with other people? Now, one of my clients this morning, who has a gym, which is obviously not open at the moment, is creating a real wellness hub. This place for all of her clients to come for more advice and assistance and attention around everything from nutrition to physiotherapy to yoga, etc., in this online hub. And in the call, we thought about how she could be collaborating with a couple of other people who could offer other services that would be of value and interest to her audience. So they're now going to be talking about what that might look like. Who else could you reach out and collaborate or co-create with at the moment? In my Your Next Chapter community Facebook group, that's the private community for women in their 40s and beyond who are creating and growing these next chapter businesses. And you're really welcome to come across and join that. There's a gorgeous bunch of women in there. What we've been doing over the last 10 days, I've invited a lot of the members to step forward and give a Facebook Live about their area of passion and expertise. And oh my goodness, the generosity and the creativity that has been flowing in these lives is fantastic. Now, these aren't lives with me there as well. This is simply me providing that platform for these gorgeous women to share what they're so great at. Now, that's an example of co-creation. We are providing something for the members, the community there, that I couldn't provide. But when I join, when I link arms with other members of that community, we're all lifted. So how might you do that? What opportunities are there for conscious connections and collaborations at the moment? I'm sure one fabulous thing that's happening as a result of this threat that we're all facing is that we're reaching out to one another more, which can be nothing but a good thing. And the last thought to leave you with on this list is conscious kindness. Now, kindness is one of my highest values. It's the way I want to show up in the world, and it is just absolutely beautiful to see how that particular quality is just escalating at the moment. There is an amazing Facebook group called the Kindness Pandemic. Now, I'm not sure if you've found that, but if you haven't, honestly, search for it. It is simply a group that has people posting about examples of beautiful small acts of kindness that they have observed since we've all been facing this current experience. I visited a couple of times a day. It's become part of the structure in the new normal for me, and it just absolutely lifts my heart. The examples that are in there are simply gorgeous. So wherever possible, Work with kindness. Kindness to yourself. That has to be up there as well. And kindness to others wherever we can. Wherever we can extend a hand and help at the moment, it just makes all the difference. I did a beautiful course many years ago called the Soul Callers course. And I'm trying really hard to remember the name of the beautiful women who ran it. Let me just tap into my brain. Got it. It was Amy Oscar. Beautiful course called the Soul Callers course. And there's a piece that I took out of this, which is really relevant here. I learned so much from Amy. She was amazing. But in particular, she asked us to consider in any given situation that you're facing that is difficult or that is threatening or that is scary or unusual or uncertain, pause and ask yourself, what would love do? In this situation, what would love do? To me, that sums up the essence of kindness, allowing yourself the power of the pause, to just pause a moment and respond rather than react. That concept is more important than ever right now. So just ask yourself, what would love do whenever you're facing something at the moment that is a little tricky, considering the tenseness and the heightened uncertainty that we're all experiencing in today's climate? So look, those are just some thoughts that I wanted to share with you. I hope that wherever you are in the world, wherever you are listening to this, I hope that you are safe. I hope that you can see with some hope in your heart that as uncertain and scary as things may be at the moment, it is also an opportunity for us to connect more deeply with other people, but also with ourselves, to really connect more deeply to meaning and purpose in our world and in our work, to strip back some of those outer layers that haven't felt that great, those layers that may have felt like the shoulds and the musts. This is an opportunity to change those, to really connect to what is most important. What do you want to gift to the world? What value do you want to add to the world? Because there is absolutely no doubt that you have immense value to add. And now is the time for you to pause, to go inwards, and to become more aware of exactly what that looks like. Okay? So thank you for lending me your ears today. If you would like to get more deeply connected, I do encourage you to come across to the Facebook community. It is Your Next Chapter community. That's just what you can search on Facebook. I'll also put the link on the show notes for this episode as well, which you'll just find at angelarasmus.com/115 for the number of the episode. Stay safe, stay uplifted, allow all of those emotions to move through, and I will talk to you again very soon. Take care. Thanks so much for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. I really do appreciate your time. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. And of course, my website, angelarasmus.com. If you enjoy the show, I'd love you to share it with another woman who's in the midst of business and life beyond 40. And if you love it, a review on iTunes or whatever app you listen in on would be fabulous. Reviews somehow impact that deeply mysterious algorithm and make it easier for the show to be found, which is always a good thing. So thanks again, and until next time, take care.